It is the Fantasy Life Show here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Adam Ronis along with Gene Clemons here for the next 2 hours on Sunday afternoon, taking you until 3 p.m. Eastern. Plenty to do here. We'll go over some news. We'll look at draft or pass. We'll look at some potential bounce-back players. Dwain McFarland from Fantasy Life will join us in hour number 2. But Gene, good to be here again with you. It's been a few weeks and back together again for another Sunday.
Absolutely. And I can't wait until until we get to the real thing, until we're back to every Sunday we get to come in early morning, chop it up with the people. When Kendall's away, the boys will play. So, we're here again, and shout out to Kendall. Hope everything's good with her. But, always a pleasure to get a chance to sit down and talk a little fantasy with you.
Yeah, definitely. And we are 10 Sundays away from the first big NFL Sunday. So it's going to be here before you know it. It feels like it's far, but you're just going to, in the blink of an eye, we're going to be here on Sunday morning getting ready for week 1.
Yeah, and I'm super excited. This feels like, I don't know what it is or why I feel like this, but it feels like there are several teams out there that could really make a run this year. And because of that, there seems to be countless amounts of combinations of rosters you can put together that might lead you to a fantasy championship. I think that's what makes fantasy so great, that it accompanies the sport, because they kind of run hand in hand. The better the teams are, the better the players are, the better your fantasy roster is, excuse me.
Yeah, no, for sure. It does feel that way. And, it makes it interesting when you're trying to go through drafts and try and figure out which offenses are going to be really good and which ones are going to be really bad. So there's a lot to kind of sort through here. How's the summer been going for you so far?
The summer has been hace mucho calor, like as hot as possibly can be. And I'm a guy who spends a lot of time outside, coaching football in the summertime. I don't remember there ever being a summer this hot. Like, I'm sure, I'm 45 years old. I'm sure that there's been some summers that have been excruciatingly hot. But it feels like this summer has just been day after day after day after day of just nonstop, heat. And I mean, just like suffocating heat, especially in the South. So that's been something that we've had to deal with. But other than that, man, just, enjoying watching the fantasy, the fantasy drafts kick up. Scott Fishbowl is rolling now, and a lot of those drafts are kicking off as well. I got an email from a Scott Fishbowl. I'm feeling like I might be in the numbers soon, and so I'm excited about that as well.
Yeah, a lot of the live drafts are going on for the Scott Fishbowl. I think they had one last week in Las Vegas, and I'm seeing other cities as well. And the slow drafts, which I'm in, kick off actually a week from tomorrow, July 7th. So that's the one that I'm in. Those now familiar, Scott Fishbowl, big fantasy football draft, mostly for charity, but a lot of people participate. And the scoring system is way different. The starting lineups, so it's not your typical home league, so it's a little different, but it gets you to think outside the box. And, there's really nowhere where you can go and figure out, okay, what's the ADP, what's the rankings? You're going to see picks all across the board. So, those formats do get you to think, and it is a little bit different. So I do enjoy it. I've been playing in it for a long time now. I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years. I can't even remember as long as it's been going on. So this would be your first year if you do it. Are you definitely in?
Yeah, it's my first year. If I get a chance to do it, I'm definitely, but I want to be in. So if I get a chance to be in, trust me, I'm going to be in. I've admired from afar. I think it's a great cause, a great way to get people involved in fantasy, a great way to supply things for charities. I think, the philanthropic part of it makes it a no-brainer. But then when you see that a lot of the who's who in the industry all participate in this, it's a chance to match wits versus some of the best minds in fantasy. And that, to me, is also something I get really excited about.
Yeah, kind of the start of fantasy football as well, because you're going to see everyone talking about it over the next few weeks. But let's take a look at some things that stood out, some headlines here and what they mean for fantasy. So Kyler Murray said he intends to run more this year, and I think we need to see that if we are going to get anything from him in fantasy. I did have Kyler Murray in several leagues last year. I did like him. It really did not work out. You can look at the final rankings and where he finished, and it wasn't that bad. But overall, he was inconsistent. And a lot of it did have to do with his running. He just didn't run enough. It felt like there were times there watching him where he had lanes open and just didn't take off and stayed in the pocket and passed instead. And we need that element from him because passing-wise, he's not a guy that's going to go throw 30, 35 touchdowns. We know he can give you a high floor if he runs, but it didn't seem like he was running as much last year. And it could have been because he was coming off the injury. But with Murray saying this, are you buying it? And what's your take on where he's going right now, his ADP? Would you buy in at this price? And you could go to fantasylife.com. I really love this tool here where you can look at ADPs and it gives you the ADPs across several sites. So he's generally going around 90, 95.1 on Underdog, 95.7 ESPN, Sleeper 91.4, Yahoo 86.3. Again, you can go to fantasylife.com and check this tool out. We know people play across different sites. So generally, he's the 8th quarterback off the board right now. So do you see Murray running more, and are you in at his current ADP?
I see him running more because he says it. Like, I think you have to take people at face value, first off. But also, like, how is this a bad thing for any fantasy manager, right? I think a lot of times quarterbacks, especially quarterbacks who are coming off injury, are still kind of leery of the injury, worried about what, like, do I have the same stability that I had in that limb before the injury? Do I feel as confident? Am I worried about being injured? So if he has a clear mind and he feels like his body is back to what it was pre-injury, then if he's running, then he's a weapon. And if he's a weapon as a runner, then that makes him better as a passer. We've seen it from all of these guys who run. Jalen Hurts kills you with a 50-yard run. He hasn't been passing well. All of a sudden, those linebackers have to scooch up to the line of scrimmage to try to be able to take his running ability away. What does he do? He hits somebody over the intermediate middle. They run for a 65-yard touchdown pass. So, like, we know that these things work hand in hand. Lamar Jackson, we watched him throughout the first, 10 to 12 games of the season, actively tried not to run. He had open lanes, and he would pull up and try to keep the play alive and throw passes. Yeah, that's great. Once he started to run towards the end of the year, it just went out of there. And he still was a guy he's a guy who can rush for 1,000 in his sleep. I think Kyler Murray has that ability to be able to rush for anywhere between 800 and 1,000 yards if he really decided to do so, because we're talking about 18 games now. And so, I'm sorry, not 18 games. We're talking about 17 games now. So, like, with that being on the table and him putting it as an emphasis for him, anytime he doesn't see what he likes down the field, he's going to take off. That 8 yards and 5 yards and 4 yards at the end of the game, if you're talking about 50-something, 60 yards, that's valuable points in fantasy.
Yeah, like he had 819 rushing yards in his second year in the league. And that year, he had 133 rushing attempts, by far a career high. Last year, he had 78, rushed for 572 yards, and 5 rushing touchdowns. So that's going to be the key is he going to get back to 100 rushing attempts? Because we saw in the first 2 years, 93 and 133, 88 in his third year. And last year, the first time that he played, 17 games when they had a 17-game season, 78. So you could see just not as many attempts on the ground. And he's going to need that because the passing, you just don't get many 3-4 touchdown passing games from Kyler Murray. He had 1 last year with 4 passing touchdowns, 1 with 3. And we did see, the offense at times did not look very well connected. It looks like a lot of times with Marvin Harrison, it wasn't there. Obviously, good rapport with Trey McBride, but it took forever for McBride to find the end zone. So, yeah, he's QB8 right now. I think that's a little high for me. If he falls a little bit, I'm willing to take him. But, again, we got to see him run. That you're going to get he can finish in the top 15, even with a bad season. But we want a higher ceiling than that, at least for me. So I think 8 for me is a little too rich right now.
Adam, of the runners, of the quarterbacks that we know give you the rushing upside, obviously take Allen and Lamar out of it, because that's 1, 2, however you want to flip it. It doesn't really matter. Like, who are the guys that you're taking over Kyler Murray as a runner? I'm obviously, I think we probably could take Jaden Daniels out of that as well, right?
Yeah, he's in.
You know, like he's going to be
over him.
Yeah, but of those other guys, like, are you taking Justin Fields over Kyler Murray if Kyler Murray's telling you, yeah, I plan to run more?
I'd probably lean Murray there. I mean, Fields we know is going to run, and I don't mind him as a QB1, more so around QB12 when a lot of the top options are gone. Fields has averaged about 50 rushing yards per game in his career, so we know he's going to run, but we also know that passing ceiling is pretty low. So at least with Murray, especially if this offense can get better in the second year with this group. So I would take Murray over Fields.
Okay, one more. Would you take a Murray coming back over what we saw out of Bryce Young the last half of the season, where he looked like the number 1 overall pick for finally after looking atrocious in the first year and a half?
Yeah, I think you got to take Murray. I mean, the one thing with Murray we've seen him have top 5, top 7 seasons when he runs. So if he's going to run a little bit more, he can certainly get there. Look, Young had a really good second half. He did run a lot more, but I still think
5 rushing touchdowns. 5 rushing touchdowns in
the last 5 games.
Yeah.
Or 4 games, yeah. I mean, but the pass attempts were still below 30 in many of those games, so I don't know. So you're buying Bryce Young?
He's one of the guys that I had on my piece that I just dropped probably a little bit less than a week ago now about my dynasty sleepers. I'm really bullish on Bryce Young. When you look at the weapons that they put around him now, it's not just a bunch of 3 yards in the cloud of dust type of possession wide receivers. They have some explosiveness. They have some guys with great catch radius. And then I just think the confidence that he has and what he was able to gain in the second half of the season last year, I think it goes a long way for him to have one of those breakout years this year. And if he plans on running the way that he ran second half of the season, and more specifically, like down the stretch the last 5 to 6 games, there's no reason why he can't put up those similar type of numbers to what you're expecting, out of these guys who are kind of like they give you a little rushing upside, but can also be like legitimate spinners of the football. He still throws a fantastic football. You could just tell the confidence wasn't there. So now that we're seeing the confidence, I'm like, man, can this guy actually be better than a Kyler Murray, better than a Justin Fields if we're talking about fantasy? I think he has a chance.
Yeah, he's definitely cheap. He's one of those guys, especially in best ball, you can get sometimes as your third quarterback and could potentially pan out there. We're going to see a lot of guys say what their goals are for the year, and sometimes they're going to be unrealistic. But Tyrone Taylor recently said his goal is to rush for 1,500 yards. And we know the Giants brought in Cam Scatterbull. Like, I had Tyrone Tracy a lot last year because he was really cheap. And this year, we're looking at it, the ADP between Tracy and Scatterbull, it's basically the same. In some drafts, you see Tracy go first, other Scatterbull. On Underdog, it's 104.2 for Tracy, 109.2 for Scatterbull. Scatterbull's going first on ESPN. On Yahoo, the discrepancy is larger, 95.6 for Tracy at 115.6 for Scatterbull. How do you see this Giants backfield playing out this year?
So the interesting part about it is I think that Tyrone Tracy saying he wants to run for 1,500 yards is one of those things that people just say out loud because they want, they want headlines, or they want clicks, they want people to say some positive things. But the truth is that he's never going to rush for 1,500 yards, because if they thought he had 1,500 yard type of talent, then they don't even draft a Cam Scatterbull where they drafted him at. They just wait and get one of the million other running backs that were in this draft that were competent big backs late rounds. So they actually, I believe they like what Scatterbull brings to the table. For fantasy purposes, this is what's going to get Tracy in trouble. It's not the split of carries, because I think Tracy will still get enough carries to be viable. It's the goal line touches. He was getting out touched last year by Singletary, and for all intents and purposes, Scatterbo is a much better short yardage option than what Tyrone Tracy was. We saw Tracy have some fumbling issues when it came to being in the trenches and being in real close quarters. So I think that's where he's going to lose a lot of his ability to rise up the fantasy ranks, is just strictly in the, I'm not going to get that 2-yard, 3-yard, 4-yard touchdown run. That'll probably go to Cam Scatterbo.
So do you see this being a split here? And
I don't see it being an immediate split. But I think that how Scatterbo performs in his role, I can see it progressing to a split. I think that the New York Giants, almost more than anyone else, has a history that proves that you can have two running backs being featured backs and it work. Like, we've seen it time and time again. You saw it with the old school Thunder and Lightning with Tiki Barber and Ron Dane. You saw it with Ahmad Bradshaw when he was in there with Brandon Jacobs. So we've seen it in different machinations over the years. There's no reason why this combination couldn't work in a dual role. But in all of those situations, there was always a running back one. Even if it was like, okay, they're splitting time, there was always someone that got more carries, and then the other person maybe did more with less. And so I could see that still being the case here, where Tyrone Tracy gets the most carries, but Cam Scatterbo gets carries that might allow him to do more with less.
Jacksonville's another backfield that's a little cloudy right now. You know, there was some talk that, Travis Etienne might be phased out. Then he's been moving up a little bit in ADP and best ball the last couple weeks. You got Tank Bixby there, Bashal Tutin, who they brought in. What's your outlook on this backfield?
I have no idea what the direction of this offense is supposed to be or look like. If you're looking at it the way I'm looking at it, the way maybe a lot of fantasy managers are looking at it, this should be a team that's looking to chuck the ball all over the place. You've got talented wide receivers. You have a tight end who showed that he can be a feature guy last year when given the opportunity. Yet they keep investing in running backs to go back there in the backfield. And these running backs are so wildly different that it's hard to understand what the philosophy is going to be, the overall philosophy of the offense is going to be. I don't even know if Liam Cohen knows what that's going to be. I think he just has pieces and he's going to try to figure it out during training camp. But you've got an ETN who's a good runner, should be a good pass receiver out the backfield. You got a home run hitter in Bashal Tutin who can go the distance from anywhere on the field, but also has fumbling issues, doesn't give you anything in blocking. He's not going to be a guy that gets you the tough yards, on short yardage or even on the goal line. And then you have a guy like Tank Bixby, who should be that more physical, rough and tumble between the tackles runner, but he can't stay on the field. So it's like, what are we going to do with all of these guys? And so you have three different dynamics at running back. Maybe they're just going to see which one shakes out, similar to what we saw happen in Tampa Bay, where they had three different runners who are different styles of runners. And eventually we saw Bucky Irvin emerge as the running back one there.
Yeah, sometimes it will take some time to sort out. When we return, we'll do draft or pass. I'll give Gene Clemons a player. He's going to decide based on his ADP. Is he going to draft or pass? Find out who we're looking at next. It is Fantasy Life here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. That's right. Time for draft or pass. I'll give Gene a player, and he's going to tell me based on his ADP, because, again, it all comes down to price. You could like a player, but maybe you don't like the price. Or you do love the price and like the player. So that's really what fantasy football is about. A lot of times we see players steamed up too much, and we love them, but not worth the cost. So we'll start off at the quarterback position with Broncos quarterback Bo Nix coming off a really good rookie season, 29 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 430 rushing yards with 4 rushing touchdowns, finished the season strong. Gene, draft or pass Bo Nix?
Yeah, so I guess that's a little bit more difficult for me because I look at where he is and I'm like, I want the elites. Like, I want the elite of the elites at quarterback. I just think for me and my philosophy, that's how you get it done. Get those guys that give you the heavy passing and give you that heavy rushing upside, or sometimes even more heavy on the rushing than the passing. And I look at a guy like Bo Nix and I go, all right, the same thing we say about everybody in year 2. Now the book's out on him. Will we see a different, will we see him defend it differently? Will he be as effective as he was in year 1? I'm inclined to say yes, because Sean Payton's a great coach. He knows how to get the best out of his quarterbacks. If your name's not Russell Wilson. And so, I look at that and go, yeah, that's still good. But for me, I want the elites. And I don't know what the elite is with him. He's not the elite passer. He's not the elite runner. So if there's an elite on the board when he's still there, I'm probably going to take the elite over him. So I'll pass.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Pass.
Yeah, I'm with you on this, because you're basically paying for last year's numbers. And I had Bo Nix in a league down the stretch. I had some quarterback injuries, picked him up, and it was great. But the ADP, it's a little rich for me right now, because he's generally the 9th quarterback off the board. I would take him a few spots later, which means I'm not going to get him. So I'm with you on that. Again, he was great last year, but I think there's definitely some risk here. And they could also run the ball better, too. They didn't have much of a running game last year. I think they do want to run a little bit more. So this guy was a value last year. That is Joe Mixon, Texans running back. Really had a strong start to the season, but faded down the stretch, had some injuries. He rushed for 57 yards or fewer in 5 of the last 6 games. So he kind of limped to the finish line. So draft or pass Joe Mixon?
Yeah, this is the one that I'm going to say draft, just from the standpoint of you're going to need a running back that's going to get work. And who is the running back 2 with Houston? So it's like, who is he competing with for carries? There are some of these guys that a lot of people like in fantasy. They're hot names in fantasy. And then you look at the roster and you're like, well, he's going to have to compete with this person and that person and this person. We just talked about the mess that is the Jacksonville Jaguars backfield. And you've got 3 guys that people all believe could have some success, but they're going to be competing for carries. In Houston, it's going to be him if he's healthy. And I think if he's healthy, he's going to give you production that's going to, bode you well in fantasy. And you're not going to have to pay the type of money that you would have to pay for some of these more premier backs. I think for me, that's a grab, especially if I've done my due diligence in some other positions before I get to, that area where he's going to fall.
Draft.
Yeah,
I love these graphics.
Mixon right now is the 17th running back off the board in ADP, 56.5 on Underdog. Just keep in mind, Underdog best ball, the receivers go way higher than the running backs you're seeing on the other sites. Mixon anywhere from 35 to 46. So, late 3rd or early 4th round. And Mixon last year finished in PPR points per game 6th among running backs. So even with the slow finish to the season, he was right up there. The guy who was right behind him in points per game last year, that is Packers running back Josh Jacobs. Draft or pass Josh Jacobs?
Okay, so just repeat what I just said before with, the Josh Jacobs is not going to have any competition for carries that really matters. Yeah, they gave carries to the number 2 guy last year, but Josh Jacobs was clearly the guy. He got the goal line touches. He got the carries that mattered. Even got some passes out the backfield more than I thought he would. Even with the addition of Golden at wide receiver, and what they're hoping to be a better passing game, they're still going to hang their hat on the rushing attack. And we all know once the temperature drops in Green Bay, what's going to happen? They're going to turn around and hand the ball off. So even if Jacobs gets off to a slower start, I expect him to have an uptick the further and further we get towards the colder months of the year. And in Green Bay, that could be all the way up to like September. No, I'm just kidding. But when you get into November and December and January, they're going to hand him the ball. Those are going to be the prime times of fantasy that when you really want your backs to be able to give you what they have and what they have best. And that's what Josh Jacobs is going to be able to do. People forget, like, with all of the talk about what Saquon Barkley did last year in a new place and all the talk about what Derrick Henry did in a new place, Josh Jacobs was out there showing that the Raiders should have probably never let him go as well. So when I look at that, I just feel like this is a motivated running back who's always been undervalued, who's always been doubted. He's going to continue to work hard and play hard because that's all he knows.
Draft.
I think what happened with Jacobs last year is people were surprised at the volume. He had 337 touches, and I think a lot of it had to do with Jordan Love not being 100%. Like, you could see he clearly was never healthy. He only had 425 pass attempts. I mean, they became a run-first team. Love had 579 pass attempts 2 years ago. So I think that's going to be something to watch. Is there more of an emphasis on passing the ball more? It doesn't mean Jacobs will then, fall apart, but they also didn't have any other running back to go to. That was the biggest thing. I don't think they wanted to give Jacobs this massive workload, but they just didn't have anyone else in that backfield, and I think that's what happened last year. So interesting to see how that divides up this year, because you got to think they're going to pass at least a little bit more. Let's look at next up, Vikings tight end TJ Hockenson. Started the year on IR, came back. We know that there's a lot of mouths to feed there. J.J. McCarthy, first-year quarterback from Minnesota. T.J. Hockenson, draft or pass?
I'm going to draft T.J. Hockenson, and it's one simple reason. It's because who's going to play tight end for you, right? So, we know he's not probably going to go as high as some of those elite levels at tight end right now. He'll probably be a little bit below those guys. But even then, if he's the third option, if he's legitimately the third option on that Vikings passing team with a quasi rookie quarterback coming in to get his first real looks, he's going to look for a security blanket. And with all the attention being paid to those receivers on the outside, Hawkinson's going to continue to get favorable matchups. They didn't get rid of him in Detroit because he was bad. They got rid of him in Detroit because he was redundant. And so now he's with the Vikings, where he is exactly what they needed when they didn't have him. And you could see that by when he came back, how much the offense continued to flourish with him. So I think he has an opportunity to have a really good season, just because you can't put your number one cornerback on everybody, and they have a couple dudes out there that are worthy of number one cornerback love. So I'm definitely taking them, mostly because tight ends, you got to find somebody to get your points on a regular basis, and I think he will.
Draft.
Yeah, Hockenson right now, the fifth tight end off the board at ADP, behind Bowers, McBride, Kittle, Laporta. There's not a lot of depth at tight end this year, so Hockenson, number 5 off the board. Next up is Dolphins running back Devon Achane, coming off a really good season last year, especially in the passing game. He obviously is going early in the second round. Draft or pass Devon Achane?
As much as I love Devon Achane, as much as I've appreciated when he's done what he's done in fantasy, I'm probably passing on Devon Achane. I don't know. I feel like everybody wants Devon Achane to be something that he's not. I think people look at Achane and for some reason they see Jahmyr Gibbs without realizing that Jahmyr Gibbs is just a different level of animal than Achane is. And so expecting, Achane to be Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, those level of guys is just not fair to him. And it's also not fair to where people are trying to draft him. So if he was further down the line, I'd be a little bit more willing to jump in. Probably in those underdog leagues where the running backs go a little later, I'd probably be a little bit more willing to take a chance on them. But as it stands right now, I'm going to pass.
Pass.
Yeah, Achane right now, even on underdog, his ADP is 17.1.
That's crazy.
So,
yeah.
Then 13.8 on ESPN, 15.3 on Sleeper, 18.7 on Yahoo. So pretty much a second-round pick wherever you look. Last year in PPR formats, 8th in points per game at the running back position, and that's with only 203 carries. So he's so heavily involved in the passing game. So PPR leagues, yes. Obviously, in half-point PPR, non-PPR, he takes a hit. Full-point PPR, though, he gets it done for sure, but is reliant on Tua staying healthy. We saw when Tua was out, it didn't go very well. Final one, Brock Bowers. We know how good he is, but you got to pay a high price tag. Are you going to draft or pass at that high ADP on Bowers?
I mean, were people taking Travis Kelce in the first round? Were people flirting with Sam Laporta in the first round before last year? I think so. And you're going to have to pay probably first to second round money if you want Brock Bowers in your locker room, on your fantasy roster. And I say smash for one reason and one reason only. He did all of that with those quarterbacks. Now he inherits the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. I don't care what people want to say about Geno Smith. For 2 years straight, he's been the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. And now that is who Brock Bowers gets to get the ball from. He's going to have a renewed running game, which means that those linebackers are going to have to pay attention to the run, which means they won't be paying attention to him as much. He's going to have all the room in the world to run on the intermediate level. He's going to get peppered with targets. And his run after the catch is better than every every tight end in the NFL not named Isaiah Likely. So, like, when you think about what he does after the catch, I think he's going to be somebody who's going to be fantastic in fantasy. He's going to borderline on wide receiver 1 type of numbers this year.
Draft.
Yeah, Bowers is generally going in the second round of most leagues, 18.4 in underdog, 13.7 on sleeper. Tight end premium leagues, he's going to go in round 1 easily for those that give a 1.5 for a tight end reception. Only had 5 touchdowns last year, but 112 receptions on 153 targets, 1,194 yards. It's always difficult, though, when you take that tight end early, you better not miss, because if that tight end doesn't live up to expectations, your roster is going to be in a bit of trouble. So if you are going to take Bowers early, you better make sure that he hits, because if not,
I can tell you something, and I don't want to cut you off. I apologize for cutting you off, but this is the opportunity. This is one of those rare occasions where you could see a guy get less targets, have less catches, and more production
because touchdowns go up.
Touchdowns are going to go up. I think his yards per reception will go up. Again, look at who was throwing him the ball last year. Like, no wonder they couldn't score touchdowns, so no wonder his touchdowns were lower. So now you're adding different elements that are going to make it easier or more beneficial to get him the ball. Like, I think that there's a chance that you could see him drop 20 less targets, maybe 10 less receptions, and have more yards and more touchdowns. I think that he's one of those ones that I would put in the unbustable category. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm pretty good when it comes to this tight end business. I think they have a star, and he's in a perfect situation for what he does.
All right, when we return, we'll look at some potential players coming off down years. Will they bounce back this year? We'll let you know next. It is Fantasy Life here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. It is Fantasy Life here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Adam Ronis and Gene Clemons here on a Sunday afternoon, taking you until 3 p.m. Eastern. Looking at some players that, will they bounce back? And let's start it off with C.J. Stroud, because last year he was the 6th, 7th quarterback off the board. I wasn't paying that price, so fortunately I did not have him on any teams. I thought it was a little overvalued, but I did not think it was going to be as bad as it was. In leagues with 6 points for a passing touchdown, C.J. Stroud was 27th in points per game. It was a bad season for him. The offensive line wasn't good. He took a ton of sacks. They had injuries at wide receiver. Whatever it is, there were a lot of reasons that went into it. But now, as you know, when you have a season like that, you're going to plummet down draft boards. And right now, C.J. Stroud is QB 20 in ADP, going 135.8 on Underdog, 145 on ESPN. So can Stroud bounce back this year? What went wrong, and could he be a value this year at QB 20?
Well, I think you just outlined what went wrong, right? Like you hit the nail on the head. I think for him, just for him, I thought he was probably a little bit more anxious, trying to be like a Pro Bowler or All Pro on every single throw, instead of just kind of letting it come to him or trusting it the first time he saw it. That's on him. But then the wide receiver injuries, obviously you talked about that. The offensive line was atrocious. You talked about that. The run game was probably better than it was his first season as well. So like all of those things conspired together to have this horrible year. And I think that what we do is we overvalue when people do things well. It's like the stock market. When it's doing well, then a lot of people buy it. Now it gets overvalued. When it's not doing as well and people cool off on it, now it gets undervalued. And I think he's in that undervalued tier now. The thing that hurts him is that he doesn't use his legs, which he actually could because he's not a bad athlete. The problem is he doesn't use his legs. But we saw in the playoffs, especially that first playoff game, that he still has the ability to carve you up, even if he's down, to his lone one weapon left, or his offensive line isn't doing well. So I think if they get the offensive line figured out, if receivers come back healthy, if they the new offensive coordinator, if he comes in and continues to build on the things that Stroud does well, I think he could definitely have a top 15 like bounce back. I don't know if he's going to be a top 10 because, again, I think you have to have that rushing upside in order to be a top 10 kind of guy, or you have to be a 5,000-yard type of dude, and that's just difficult to do today. But I could see him being a top 15 guy if he gets it back going right.
Next up is Rome Odunze from the Bears, drafted 9th overall in 2024. There was a lot of excitement for him. For me, I just looked at that Bears offense, and I just didn't see if there was enough targets there for him to produce. So he had 101 targets, 54 catches, 734 yards, 3 touchdowns. Can he bounce back this year and deliver a much better season?
Yeah, I don't. It's weird. Like I know a lot of people were like bummed at what his production, but I didn't know what people thought he was going to do with a rookie quarterback and 2 other wide receivers that are established and a tight end. And like, I thought it was just going to be difficult for him to exist. Now, when you remove Keenan Allen from the equation, does he step into the Keenan Allen role? Does his role expand? Or is he still going to find himself in this situation because all of these tight ends are around with Loveland and everybody, that he's still like really hurting for targets? I think this is one you're going to have to monitor early. You're probably going to want to pay for him. Not pay a premium, but definitely pay for him if you want him on your team. But it might be a situation where you may bench him for the first few games to try to figure out, what he's going to do. Or you put him out there, he doesn't do well, you don't cut him, you don't release him, but you just stuff him away for a while until his role really settles in. He's still a tremendous talent, but it's going to be hard because there's a lot of mouths to feed in Chicago.
Yeah, with everything that they added, Colston Loveland and Luther Burden and DJ Moore. So Odunze right now, his ADP is 33 at wide receiver. So going ahead of guys like Jawan Jennings, Jordan Addison, Chris Godwin, Chris Olave. So he's in that range. Obviously, we think that the Bears offense will be a lot better, and they better be for a lot of people's sakes. Isaiah Pacheco obviously had the injury, came back. It was not the same player, but I don't know what you could have expected from him coming off that fibula injury. It seems like, a lot of people not really interested in Pacheco. He's like around RB 30 in ADP. So can he bounce back and, deliver on his ADP?
Yeah, I think he has a chance to bounce back because he runs extremely hard. And what we saw coming back from the injury is that he just didn't have that level of explosiveness that he had before. So if that level of explosiveness is back, I think he'll be fine. But quiet as it's kept, it's really not him that we're worried about. It's his offensive line. Like, no more Joe Thuney. He's with the Bears now. Like, what are they going to do to address the fact that when Thuney moved outside the tackle, they were no longer able to attack but from between the tackles. Like they just did not have that ability to push defenses out the way. If that's going to continue, then I don't like anybody in the backfield for Kansas City. But if they're able to get that back under control, I think a guy that runs as hard as Isaiah Pacheco does, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I like him at his ADP right now. Maybe that might be my second RB, depending on how I draft. He's the RB 27 off the board right now, anywhere from 65 to 80. So depending on the build, a lot of times I just take a bunch of shots at the RB2, build the rest of my team strong. So I could see Pacheco, especially at that ADP. You're talking 7th, 8th round. Yeah, I would take a chance there, hoping that he bounced back, because I did like him a lot going into last year, and then the injury happened early. When we return, we'll wrap up the hour. We'll look at teams that were in last place last year. Which of those teams has the best chance to finish first this year? We'll let you know next. It is Fantasy Life here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Adam Ronis and Gene Clemons here on Sunday afternoon, taking you until 3 p.m. Eastern, as we are 10 Sundays away from the start of the NFL season. But you better start preparing now. Head over to fantasylife.com. We got rankings, strategy articles, best ball targets, guillotine leagues, everything. We have you covered, so make sure you check it out. Get prepared now. I know some people slack off and they wait, but these drafts are going to be here before you know it, and you don't want to be last minute scrambling. We got you covered all year round, so jump in now if you haven't already. Just wanted to take a look at, we always see teams jump from the bottom to the top every year. There's always a handful, and sometimes you see a team that finished in last finishing first. So I just wanted to see, there's probably one easy one that you're probably going to take here, but these are the teams that finished last season. The Patriots, Browns, Titans, Raiders, Giants, Bears, Saints, and 49ers. Which couple of these do you think has the chance to go from last to first? I think we all know the layup one, right?
Yeah, the Paul Revere is the 49ers, right?
Yeah, and they're the favorite to win the division at plus 150 right now, slightly ahead of the Rams.
Which, by the way, it's great money. Like plus 150, you're still getting plus 150 on them when it seems as if they're by far and away the most stable in that in that division. I think that's a great place to be. 49ers are easy. I think one that would be a little more outside of the box would be a team like the Browns that could go worst to first. I think that they have such so many defensive elements that are good. They lack the consistent offense. And then when they got a consistent offense, it was just too many turnovers. So I think if you get somewhere in the middle where the offense can be productive and not turn the ball over as much, which I don't think is going to happen with Joe Flacco in there, just for the record, ladies and gentlemen. But if you can get an offense to be a little bit more, settled, and then the defense, especially in the back half, can get a little bit more consistent. Who are the Steelers? We know that Cincinnati doesn't play any defense. That's why they don't want to play their all-world defensive end. And then, the Ravens are the Ravens, but you got to deal with somebody. So I go with the Browns.
I'm surprised. That was not what I was expecting. They are plus 3,000 by far. So if you do feel that way, hey, you can only put a little money on that.
A little sprinkle.
Look, the Ravens obviously are clear-cut one of the best teams in the NFL. So that's the issue. But you do make a point. I mean, look, the Bengals, as good as they are offensively, a lot of problems with their defense. Steelers as well. I thought the Bears might be a team. I know that division's tough, but Lions, Packers, Vikings, it's tough. But if the Bears live up to expectations and Ben Johnson does turn them around, I thought that would be where you might go for another team.
Yeah, no, I think that's a decent one, but you've got to jump over 3 quality teams in order to get to first. Whereas in the AFC North, you only got to jump over 1.
I think the Patriots could be interesting. They obviously have the Bills there, but Jets, Dolphins. I mean,
same thought process.
Yeah. So, I wasn't expecting the Browns though. But hey, if you do call that right, and they do emerge. I'll give you a lot of credit that you called it here on late June. So
No, we'll have Kelsey clip that one up and make sure that we've got that one in the tuck.
yeah, but I think definitely, obviously, the layup is everyone would take the 49ers, Bears. Again, the Patriots, it's the Bills that are there. That's the biggest issue for them. But they definitely look like they're an improved team with what they did in the offseason. Now they got to hope that some of these receivers and pass catchers can help Drake May. 1 hour to go. When we come back, we'll have the water cooler. Dwain McFarland will also join us in hour 2. It is Fantasy Life here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. That's right, Fantasy Life here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. 1 more hour to go here on a Sunday afternoon. Time to hit the water cooler. Look at some of the things floating around here in the NFL. And so Sean Payton said this week that it's too early to project the running back depth chart. Now, there was excitement for RJ Harvey. I mean, he was going really early in drafts. Like, his price just kept rising and rising. And then it's dipped a little bit here after J.K. Dobbins was brought in a couple weeks ago. So you got Harvey, who they drafted, J.K. Dobbins they brought in, Audric Estime, Jaleel McLaughlin. We saw those guys last year. It didn't really do much. So I guess the key is, when you look at it here, is this a situation where they ease R.J. Harvey in and it takes some time? And we know J.K. Dobbins last year, when he was healthy, was good, right? We saw it with the Chargers. So he did get injured late in the year, but overall it was a good season for him. It is a different offense. We know the Chargers like to run the football. He averaged 4.6 yards per carry, played 13 games. I think that was the biggest thing. You know, the most games he's played since 2020, when he played 15 games in his rookie year. So he stayed healthy, caught 32 of 38 passes. So when you look at this backfield, what is your take on how it's going to play out? And are you interested in Harvey and Dobbins, one or the other, or even both?
I think Dobbins has the opportunity to, not Dobbins, excuse me, I think Harvey has the opportunity to be he has the opportunity to wrestle the job away or keep the job away from Dobbins. I think Sean Payton wants Harvey to prove that he should be the lead back. And if not, then it'll allow the offense to start bringing the other backs in. But if Harvey comes out there and he just looks like he has the most juice in his legs, if he looks like he's the most quality runner, what will he be as a pass receiver out the backfield? We know that is how the Sean Payton backs who have been ultra successful have been able to get by not just being a runner, but also being a pass receiver as well. So I think if he can show that if he can go out there and say, all right, I'm proving to you that I'm the guy, then it'll keep the other guys at bay. But if he comes out there and he looks shaky, or if he finds it, you know, he needs a little time to get his feet wet, I think that opens up all the possibilities of this being like a super committee where we see essentially 8 to 10 carries maybe for one person, and then a 5 and a 6 over here and a 3 over there, which makes it a lot more difficult in fantasy to try to judge how they'll be, what their value will be.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I've seen some reports that some of the writers were speculating that Dobbins could be the third down back, which to me, I feel like maybe that's what you want Harvey. I don't know if they're worried about pass protection, but it looked like the Broncos front office, they really wanted Harvey early in the draft process, and they were a little worried about him, you know, moving up in the final weeks before the draft. So it feels like this was a target. And we know with Sean Payton and the running backs in his backfield, because last year they just were not efficient at all. As good as the Denver offense was, you got to give them the credit. They didn't get anything out of that backfield. I mean, it was painful watching that running game. It was the passing game that really did it for them. But it feels like Harvey is a guy that they want to succeed. But at the same time, as you said, you don't want to put too much pressure on him early. I think fantasy players, too, they always have dreams and visions and hopes for a player. It feels like fantasy players want Harvey to be the guy in this offense.
Yeah, and for good reason. He's a talented back, man. He's a really good back, and we saw what he was able to do in college. We think that the running back position is the most easily transferable when it comes to skill sets from what they did in college to what they're going to do in the pros. So I can see why a lot of people, think that he should be the guy or have hopes for him to be the guy. I think the front office and the coaching staff feels the same way, but they won't force it on him. They won't just bequeath the job to him. He's going to have to earn it. And that's why I think he should come out there and just go, full blast, balls to the wall, shoulder pads, no shoulder pads. He needs to come out there and run like Isaiah Pacheco runs early on and just leave no doubt. Hey, give me 15 to 20 carries a game, and you'll be good to go.
ESPN's Cameron Wolf reported that Browns quarterback Joe Flacco is the favorite to be the starter, but he did say Kenny Pickett will have a chance to steal the job. I think what we're looking at here for the Browns is, for the quarterback, it's going to influence what we do with guys like Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, right? Because to me right now, when you look at Njoku and his ADP, I think it's undervalued, especially if Flacco is the quarterback. Now, Flacco was not the same quarterback last year, but Njoku right now, his tight end ADP is 11. I mean, we know what he can do if the quarterback can get him the football. So I think that's what I'm looking at here with this quarterback situation. So if it's Joe Flacco, how do you feel about Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku in this offense?
I don't feel the greatest. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't feel the greatest.
No one's gonna feel great, but I'm saying, can we get enough targets, catchable targets for those guys to be decent in fantasy or solid?
I think it will all depend on whether or not this run game is reinvigorated with these new backs that they have in the backfield. I think if you're getting legitimate rushing attack from them, then yes, you can have some success and you can see enough targets thrown. But I'm wondering about all of this. It's just a lot of conjecture, and I'm ready to just see what the Browns actually look like when they line up, because people keep saying Joe Flacco, people keep saying Kenny Pickett, and the only thing that we keep seeing is Shadur Sanders dropping dimes all over the place. Do they just not film the touchdowns that Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett are throwing? Like, why don't we ever see any of the hype videos that you see from these other organizations that have Joe Flacco throwing all these touchdowns in practice, or Kenny Pickett throwing all these touchdowns in practice? But we see Shadur Sanders throwing touchdowns left and right all over the place. And then you get reports from Cameron Wolf to say oh, well, Joe Flacco's the number one quarterback, but Kenny Pickett will have a chance. I just don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so I'm looking at that stuff and I'm saying, okay, if Joe Flacco is the guy, people think they're getting no risk it, no biscuit Joe Flacco from the Browns when he came in, when the team was dead and they thought they had no chance of having success, and he was just able to do whatever he wanted. They're not getting that guy. Now when teams see him, they're not going to go, oh, he just got off the couch. They're going to go, he's playing quarterback, and they're going to treat him as such. And we know what happens when they treated him as such in Indianapolis. He was not good. So what does that mean for these wide receivers and tight ends out here? Who knows? I think that they'll have to throw the ball because they might be down in some games. That'll be good as far as getting targets. But does that mean I feel good about the quality of those targets? I don't know.
Yeah, he was not good last year. 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions with the Colts, and it was not the same quarterback that we saw with the Browns when he came off the couch to spark them down the stretch. So I think that's why you're seeing people a little lukewarm on Njoku with a tight end 11. To me, he should be higher. And Jerry Jeudy's the other one, too, that you got to look at, right? Because we saw last year with Deshaun Watson, he was brutal. You couldn't even start him. And then he was basically, with Winston, a Pro Bowler and was putting up insane numbers. So, and his ADP is 38th at wide receiver. So I think that's why you're seeing these ADPs. People do have questions about what the situation will be at quarterback for the Browns. Dallas Goedert said that his offensive coordinator is talking about getting him the ball more in 2025. Look, I think Goddard's a really good tight end, but for fantasy, it just never happens. He always finishes, in that 8 to 12 range. It's just not what I want at tight end in fantasy. I do think the Eagles are going to have to pass more. Last year, they won easily, right? They just ran the ball with Barkley. They had big leads. They didn't need to throw. That's why you didn't see the prolific numbers from A.J. Brown. They were good, but he could have been a lot better. But there's going to be more competitive games this year. The schedule's tougher, but do you see enough here that we can get a good fantasy season from Dallas Goedert if that does happen, or do you believe it will happen?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to pass the ball a little more. The schedule is tougher, but the formula is still the same. I mean, look at the last time that they went to the Super Bowl with the first time they went to the Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts. Like, Miles Sanders had a phenomenal season that year. They are going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball first, and then they're going to work the passing game off the run. Now, here's why I think you could see Dallas Goedert have an uptick. Number one, part of the reason why he's not as good in fantasy is because he can't put together a full season, right? He's always going to be out for a stretch of games. That's going to hurt him in fantasy because he's not healthy either before he went out or when he comes back. So it's going to take him some time to get back. But here's what I like about Dallas Goedert. He seems to be the screen guy. Like, he's the guy that they go to, that short, like, now screen that they throw to a lot of receivers. They do it a lot with Ray. They used to do it a lot with Ray Rice 2 years ago in Kansas City, where they would just flick it out there to him right now, and he would, like, an extended run play. He's the guy that they do that with, and they do that with him in the slot. I think that's an easy way to get cheap yards, cheap receptions. Obviously, in a tight end premium league, that's fantastic. Even in regular leagues, a reception and an 8-yard gain, like just on essentially a long handoff, that's great. I think you could see him have more of an impact that way. I would love to see him get utilized more over the middle, because those linebackers have to pay so much attention to not only Saquon Barkley running the ball, but Jalen Hurts. So when you come off that play action, either via the RPO game or just off of your traditional play action where you come off and you're looking for those guys to bite, he should be the guy that's wide open there. I think if he stays on the field, he has an opportunity for that to happen. But that's if his health allows him to stay out there on the field.
Yeah, I just don't think he has, in this offense, the ability to be a tight end one in fantasy. He's never had more than 60 receptions in a season. He's top 702 receiving yards once. He's never had more than 5 touchdowns. To me, if you're looking at a tight end in fantasy, they need to either be score 7, 8, 9 touchdowns, or they have to be a top 2 target in their offense. And that's not the case for Goedert. He's got Smith and Brown ahead of him. When one of those guys is injured, those are the weeks you want to use Goedert. But I just don't think there's enough here. He's a good player, but we're talking fantasy now where we need the targets. And the way this offense is set up, it's just not conducive for Goedert to being a tight end one the entire season. So, and drafters feel the same way. His ADP is 15 at tight end, and I think that's right. I think what happens is people miss out on the top tight ends. They're sitting there and they go, okay, who's left? Oh, Dallas Goedert. Yeah, he's pretty good. I'll take him. And then you deal with mediocrity the entire season, So he's just not a guy that I want in fantasy. His role in this offense does not translate to consistent fantasy numbers unless they become a real pass-heavy team, and I don't see that happening. ESPN's Stephen Holder said it was practically impossible to watch a Colts practice and not notice how often Tyler Warren touched the football. Look, they drafted a tight end early. You would think, okay, he's going to be utilized heavily. We know the Colts have had major problems trying to get the ball to a tight end. It looks like, at least for now, Daniel Jones is going to be the quarterback. We'll see. Anthony Richardson could be ready to go for training camp, but he's behind with that shoulder injury. Tyler Warren's ADP right now is 10 at the tight end position. So doesn't cost that much. I mean, you could take him and get another tight end, too, to back him up. Are you interested? Do you think his role will be massive in this Colts offense?
Who's the wide receiver one in Indianapolis?
Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, those two?
Yeah, it's Tyler Warren.
Okay.
That's that's the issue. Like, I mean, that's the reason, because they don't have a real legitimate wide receiver one. People didn't want to label Darius Slayton a wide receiver one when he was in the Giants. Those two dudes would kill for numbers like Darius Slayton has had, right? So when you're thinking about like who's the number one focus of the offense to get the ball to, it's not Pittman, right? It's not Josh Downs. It's that guy in the backfield, Taylor, and then it's going to be Warren. And if you've got two quarterbacks who both have an ability to run, right? Both can get yards with their legs. What's the best option for them is to pair them with a tight end who can run with them, so that if they need someone to flick it off to, they can flick it off to. I think it makes sense. I could also see probably a lot of packages for Tyler Warren to carry the ball in short yardage and in goal line situations. How many times are we going to see the Colts get to the 5-yard line or the 3-yard line and just put Tyler Warren at quarterback and just let him go wildcat and power that thing in Cam Newton style? I think you could see that happen 5 to 7 times this year. That's going to make him invaluable. If he gets 5 and 7 rushing touchdowns in order to go with whatever he does as a pass receiver, it's going to be hard to argue for him to be at that level where he's being drafted at right now.
Do you think it matters who the quarterback is, whether it's Jones or Richardson for Warren?
I don't think it matters. I think the reason that they went out and got Jones is because the game plan could be similar. The thing they messed up with is they had this game plan ready for a guy, and then when he got hurt, they had to have a completely different game plan in place for the guy that backed him up, which is why Joe Flacco never made any sense in Indianapolis. But if you're going to back up Anthony Richardson with a Daniel Jones, a guy who is long and athletic, now you've got similar attributes, right? That makes it easier for them to be able to continue and run the same offense with both guys. So whatever they're doing to get the ball in the hands of Tyler Warren with Anthony Richardson, that's what they're going to do with Daniel Jones as well.
Yeah, certainly seems that's the plan, at least, that the Colts hope it pans out for them. Tyler Warren, again, taken in that first round, going off the board as tight end 10 at 123 overall on Underdog. When we return, will it happen? I'll present Gene with some scenarios, and he'll let us know if it could happen for the upcoming football season. That is ahead. It is Fantasy Life here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. It is Fantasy Life here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Adam Ronis and Gene Clemons here until 3 p.m. Eastern. Talking some fantasy football here on a Sunday as we get ready to help you dominate your drafts. And I'm going to present Gene with some scenarios right now, and I'm going to ask him, will it happen in 2025? The first one is Caleb Williams becomes the first Bears quarterback to pass for 4,000 yards. Gene, will it finally happen this year?
Yes, it will finally happen. Really, really easy. I think that's an easy one. If you look at what he did last year on what people considered to be a bad first season for some reason, like you look at his trajectory, it says 4,000 yards. Like you look at his receiving core, it says 4,000 yards. You look at his arm talent, it says 4,000 yards. And more importantly, if you look at his coaching staff and what they are going to want to do, it says 4,000 yards. Plus, they're probably going to be in a lot of shootouts. They're going to be in a lot of games where they have to put points on the board. They're going to have to pass the ball. I think he'll get the ball out of his hands faster this year. 4,000 yards. If 4,000 yards was the bet on Underdog and over-under, I would stamp it for over 4,000 yards for him, or any other place where you can do those types of things.
Now, are you in at him for fantasy? He is the QB 12 in ADP right now. Are you willing to take him? I know you said you like to get an elite quarterback, but say others in the league have the same sentiment as you, and they take your elite guys. Are you good drafting Caleb Williams as your QB1 this year?
Yeah, I would be good drafting him if my elite guys and my right behind those elite those elite three were gone. If he had to be my quarterback for the season, I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, I just got to figure this thing out week to week. I'd feel good about what he brings to the table, especially if, number one, he trusts his legs and just takes off and runs like a regular human being instead of kind of sometimes what he does when he tries to run gets a little too cute. And then also if he just lets the ball go, like don't get enamored with trying to like hit the big play, just continue to get the ball out your hands and get it into the hands of the guys who are going to do something after the catch with it. He's got all the weapons in the world. He's got all the confidence and all the brain trust in the front office and coaching staff to allow him to mature to a 4,000-yard passer. I could see him being a 4,500 rushing type of guy.
Does Saquon Barkley repeat as the RB1 in fantasy? It hasn't happened in a long time. The last one was LaDainian Tomlinson. So it has not been easy to repeat in fantasy as the RB1. Does Saquon Barkley do it?
So my first inclination was to say no, because like you said, it just usually never happens. Year two, you find people to get injured and that thing, and people know you're coming, so they focus on you. But here's the difference with Philadelphia. You can't just focus on Saquon. On most of those teams where the running back was really all they had, or just one of those things, you could just focus on trying to stop them and hold them to a lesser year where somebody else was able to emerge. Who's stopping Saquon? Like, if you just decide we're just going to sell out on Saquon, then Jalen Hurts is going to pull it and run for 65 yards behind your head. If you decide, oh, we're going to just take away Saquon, we're going to watch Jalen Hurts, then he's going to hit Devontae Smith in the slot, and Devontae Smith's going to run 65 yards. If you decide that you're going to play passive, then he'll just kill you by throwing those 12-yard back shoulder darts to those receivers. Like he just they have so many different options in order to get this thing done that I believe Saquon Barkley will run it back. And this is probably the biggest reason why. Saquon Barkley is now motivated. Now that he has a Super Bowl and he has his money, he's now motivated by being one of the best backs ever. Well, what cements you as a best back ever? Back-to-back 2,000-yard seasons. And last year, he gave away the rushing title, like the all-time single season rushing nod. Like, he gave it away. He won't give that away this year. So if he gets an opportunity to go after Eric Dickerson's record this year, he's going to break it. And I think he'll do it pretty lightly, because even though he had a lot of touches, he didn't get a lot of hits on his body. So I'm taking him to repeat as the rushing leader this year.
So if you had the number one overall pick, would you take him?
He's my RB. I mean, he's my 1.01 right now. Like, he's my guy.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you can't just go, well, it hasn't happened, so I can't do it. You got to have the reasons why. I mean, I think the biggest one that people will say is, well, is he going to stay healthy again? But we could say that about every running back that goes in the first round. So, but yeah, he's coming off that insane season that won a lot of people titles because he was going late first round. This is a big one here, and I think it's going to really determine some early drafts. Will Tyreek Hill return to being a top 5 fantasy receiver this year?
Will Tyreek Hill's quarterback decide that he just wants to throw Tyreek Hill the ball? A lot of people said, well, Tyreek Hill fell off last year, and I argue he didn't fall off. His offense just decided they couldn't get him the ball anymore, right? So if that's the case, if that's what continues to happen, and they're just using him as a decoy to keep defenses deep so they can throw the ball underneath to the running back or to the tight end, then yeah, no, he's not going to have a great fantasy year. But if they go back to going, we have the ultimate cheat code because we can throw it up and we can't outthrow him, then he'll be a top 5 wide receiver again. Did you see what he did in the track? 10-2 in the preliminary? He's 31 years old. Like, 31 years old, not a track athlete, and goes out there and runs 10-2. That is ridiculous time. Like, he still has that I'm gone immediately, peace out speed. So I think he has the ability to return to a top 5 position, but it really will depend on his genius coach and his quarterback on whether or not that'll happen.
Yeah, it's insane how that offense changed. It was all Achane and Jonnu Smith. I mean, Tyreek Hill went from 170 targets 2 straight seasons with Miami to 123 last year. Didn't even get to 1,000 yards. He was top 3, top 4 in drafts last year. Now we're seeing him at wide receiver 16. 28 is the ADP on Underdog. So you're talking early third-round pick for a guy that just 2 years ago was on pace at one point to get 2,000 receiving yards, finished with 1,799 and 13 touchdowns. So if you feel that the offense will change and get him the football, he had that thumb injury last year too as well. But we saw a big drop-off from him last year. But like you said, he was not getting the football. There were many games where you're sitting there and you're like, how is he not getting targets? I mean, there were so many games that he did not get double-digit targets. And you would say, yeah, almost every game he should be a lock for double-digit targets. He only had 3 games last year of double-digit targets.
That's great. Question. If he's there, like if he's going wide receiver 17, what round is that?
He's going like 3, early round 3.
So if you see him sitting there in round 3, are you passing him up? Because I'm not passing him up. He's sitting there in round 3.
Yeah, he could be a guy that I think, depending on what we see in training camp and preseason and reports, that maybe he moves up. But yeah, I think he should be a high wide receiver 2 is the area where he should be drafted right now. Wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside. Yeah.
Right? Like, but if he's sitting there, if I'm letting anyone know right now, if you were in a draft with me and you allowed Tyreek Hill to drop to the 3rd round or even the 4th round, he won't be there anymore because I am getting him. There's no way I'm letting him drop past the 3rd round for me.
This guy didn't drop to round 3 in any leagues that I saw last year. That's Marvin Harrison Jr. He was going late 1st, early 2nd round and did not deliver. Can he finish as a top 20 wide receiver this year?
Yes, he can. I think we know that wide receivers, almost more than any other position outside of maybe tackle, where you see that the change from year 1 to year 2 so like evident because they just understand the game better and how it's played at this level. I think that's partially due to the ridiculous amounts of targets that were thrown at the tight end that didn't allow him, who is supposed to be the wide receiver 1, to get what he deserves as a wide receiver 1, which is an abundance of targets. So I think if those targets even out a little bit more, like maybe he isn't just like the overwhelming target majority, but if he just starts to get more of those, I think you'll see him make more plays. I think he'll be more comfortable. You've seen the shots of his body. So he's on that David Boston. If anybody remembers David Boston, especially the last probably 6 years of his career, he was just a physical specimen. I think he's on that type of time. That's going to be trouble for anyone. It's going to be hard to bring this dude down on those short passes where he just gets to turn and use his physicality against those guys. And I think he's going to be more explosive, on the deep passes, which I think was something I didn't see enough of in college or in the pros, which is separation from wide receivers. So I think we'll probably see more of that. I like him to be have that type of season this year.
The Athletic, Zach Kiefer says we should look for more emphasis on explosion from the Chiefs' passing game this season. With that said, can Patrick Mahomes finish as a top 5 quarterback this season?
If he decides that he wants to rekindle the bombs away years when he had Tyreek Hill and all of those guys, absolutely. Like if they get a consistent 3rd level presence, then they go right back to being the Chiefs that are like, what are we supposed to do with these guys? Like the reason they look human right now is because they haven't had a consistent 3rd level presence. But they've got 3 guys in their receiving core who can threaten the 3rd level. And then they have a guy who I believe is sneaky, and I'm going to try to stuff him away in a lot of places, Jalen Royals, who I think has an opportunity to be a really good receiver. He's just so savvy. He knows how to get his hands on the ball. He's got some of the best hands. He'll probably still have some of the best hands on that team. And if they decide they want to go vertical with the game again, yeah, I think Patrick Mahomes will be right back to a top 5 quarterback again. Remember, these seasons that he's had, people are acting as if they're like down seasons. They would be career years for many other quarterbacks in the league. So I look at what he's done, and I say if they're able to add that element back, he's going to be explosive. He'll be special.
Yeah, and he is the QB6 in ADP. A little surprised by that, but people are paying up for Patrick Mahomes. When we return, we'll be joined by Dwain McFarland of Fantasy Life. We're going to talk some recipe for quarterback success with him. It is Fantasy Life here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. It is Fantasy Life on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. Adam Ronis and Gene Clemons. Right now, we're joined by Dwain McFarland from Fantasy Life. We're going to talk recipe for quarterback success, sponsored by Bud Light.
Yeah, right away. We're sponsored by Bud Light. That's a good Sunday right there, and we are going to talk some quarterbacks. But, okay, fantasy football fans, sure, the NFL season may be long over, but next season's action is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it. And all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy, Mr. Ronis.
Yes, and it's easy to enjoy all the articles that you have on Fantasy Life, and you have one talking about fantasy football quarterback projections as we're looking for that upside. We know you can take one of the elite guys early, peace of mind, but some drafts, you don't want to go that way. You want to find that value at quarterback. So, what goes into finding the value at quarterback that you can wait on in drafts?
Well, really the genesis of this article was we get so tied up in talking about, the passing ability of quarterbacks and then the rushing ability of quarterbacks. And I don't think we talk enough about how they come together, right? People will say, yeah, Justin Fields is a really good runner, but we don't probably give Caleb Williams enough credit for how good he is, given what kind of passer he could be. Same thing with Bo Nix, even Trevor Lawrence. There are these guys that are kind of tweeners. They're not necessarily the elite rushers, but they're good enough passers, and they're also good enough on the ground. You know how this stuff works, Ronis. If you somehow spike in both of those categories, right, and you get some upside in one season, that gives you a chance to really be a difference maker. So I just wanted to, dig into the data and start to break down. And I started from a passing standpoint, okay, looking at how good of a passer these players were. And then I layered in, okay, what happened, like if they were also a good rusher. So, like, for example, I'm not even going to talk about group 1 because it's 300 plus yards per game passers. We don't get those anymore because the way the NFL plays defense and just the way the offenses have evolved, we rarely get guys that are going to average over 300 yards per game. But we do still get this bucket where you would have like Joe Burrow, right? In that great bucket, 275 to 299 passing yards per game. And so listen to this. If you look at all of the guys that have averaged 275 to 299 passing yards per game back to 2011, 1 of 33. These are great passers. Only 1 of 33 have reached 22 plus fantasy points per game. You're like, well, how'd you choose 22? Well, 22 is the average of the top 3 quarterbacks over since 2011. It also represents a 20% advantage in points per game versus low-end QB1. So it is actually helping you differentiate your team. We don't want to take guys, right, they're just going to help us a little. We're aiming for the upside of someone that truly could help us offset. Well, we didn't take a Josh Allen. We didn't take one of these early quarterbacks. We know we're not going to get 25 points per game, but if we could get something just under that, and maybe we grab a really good running back in round 3 when our league mates are grabbing Josh Allen, then that's a way we could potentially offset. But listen how much these numbers change, Ronis. If you run for 10 to 19 yards per game and you're still in that 275 to 299 passing bucket, now 71% of those players hit 22 plus fantasy points per game. And you can just go on down the list. If you look at good passers, which is 250 to 274, okay, those that rush for 9 yards or less per game in a season, just guess. Gene, you guess. I haven't got to say anything to Gene yet. Gene, you got to guess. Guys that threw for 250 yards to 274 yards per game, but averaged less than 9 yards rushing per game. How many of those do you think actually scored 22-plus fantasy points in a season since 2011? You
I
can't
would
cheat.
say,
Don't read the article.
I would say probably 2 to 3.
Yeah, it's one of 68. So 1.5%. So just being a good passer is not enough. But if you add in a little bit of rushing, it gets better, right? Those guys that ran for 10 to 19 yards, 13% of them went on to hit 22 plus. Those guys that ran for 20 to 29 yards, 22% of them. Guys that run for 30 plus yards per game, 86% of them in that same good passer bucket ended up being guys that reached 22 plus fantasy points per game. So it's really a way of how these things all come together, right? You can be an above average passer and also an above average rusher, and that can be enough to really give you ceiling, right, in your projection. So it's just something I wanted to dive into because I just feel like we way too often just talk about one or the other, right? Oh, he's a good passer. Oh, he's a good rusher. We all know we've got the dual threat elites, the top four. We don't need to talk about them. But I feel like everybody else kind of gets clumped into one bucket or the other when really the truth is somewhere in between.
So with that, Dwayne, I'm looking at the article. I've looked at the article and I see the way these things fell off. Should fantasy managers be changing their mindset behind the type of quarterback they're looking for, at that top position? Because we just talked about it, like for all of the passing yardage and touchdowns that Joe Burrow was able to have this year, we still know that the QB1's not Joe Burrow when it comes to fantasy. So should guys be looking to change around how they attack quarterback in fantasy, knowing that you can find a guy who's only finishing with somewhere around 230, 240 yards a game, but has a high rushing upside, as compared to going out and trying to get a Justin Herbert who, might get you 300, but isn't necessarily always giving you that rushing upside.
Yeah, well, number one, the good news for Burrow is he does actually move around a little bit more than people think, right? He's in that 10 to 19 yards per game bucket. So it's like it's just enough that he is in that group that is 71% of the time they score 22 plus fantasy points. So he's fine. But yes, it should change the way you think about it. I will say this, guys. I don't know how you feel, but this year I feel like is one of the years more than ever where I really am willing to take one of the Elite Four dual threat quarterbacks. And the reason why is last year we were comfortable because we had Jaden Daniels sitting there in round 9 or 10. And we knew he gave us a shot to offset what we were getting from those very top guys. This year we don't have that. We do have a rusher that's going QB 10 to 12, but that's Justin Fields. And so when we look at Justin Fields, yeah, he's really good, as a runner, but he's not a good passer, right? Like at least to this point in his career, that's not worked out. If we look at the games where Justin Fields has played at least 90% of the snaps, so let's get rid of stuff where he got brought in partway through the game, things where he got knocked out of the game with injury. He's averaged only 180 yards passing per game, right? That's just not good. That's really bad. So even though he's a good rusher and he does give you some ceiling in the Fantasy Life ceiling projections at 23.7 fantasy points per game, which is still really good, like it's really hard for him to just go completely nuclear because he would need to also do it as a passer, and we just haven't seen it there yet. But man, the guy I really do like, Gene, if we're talking about some names to target that go later, and you guys talked about him in the last segment, but it's Caleb Williams, man. You talked about all the reasons why he could be better as a passer and why he could throw for over 4,000 yards this year. But, I mean, we're also talking about a guy that had 81 rushing attempts last year, almost 500 rushing yards, and he didn't score a rushing touchdown. Since 2011, quarterbacks with 70 to 90 rushing attempts, they've averaged 3.6 rushing touchdowns, right? And he had 0. So if he just regresses a little bit, right, positively, and he scores a few rushing touchdowns and some of the other things that you talked about, you got Ben Johnson, you get Colson Lovell, and now you get Luther Bird, and hopefully you get DJ Moore's head right? And you're talking about just having a whole new offensive scheme with Ben Johnson. And he was the number 1 pick 2 years ago. And what's the thing we saw, man? Dude, the dude is making all the big plays. He's making the big throws down the field that we love to see from Mahomes. One of the things we like to see from Josh Allen. He was just struggling with the consistency of, hey, on first down, man, you got a 5-yard gain, take it. Let's not get in second and long. Let's not get in third and long. So if Ben Johnson can help him with those things, I think you're 100% on, man. This is a guy that could throw for over 4,000 yards, rush for 450 to 550. And man, if he hits a spike in both of those and suddenly throws 35 passing touchdowns and runs for 6 or 7, like you're going to have a top 3 fantasy quarterback, maybe a top 2. So I think he's squarely in range for top 6. I have him ranked the highest of all the Fantasy Life rankers. I have Caleb as my QB9.
Can Liam Cohen get Trevor Lawrence to borderline QB1?
Man, I'm hoping so, Ronis. I'm a noted Trevor Lawrence. I don't want to say hater. I never really hate anyone, but it's just we're to the point where we've seen Trevor Lawrence long enough, and maybe it's an expectation thing, right? Our expectations were so high for Trevor Lawrence, and he just hasn't lived up to it. It's not that he's been terrible. He just hasn't been the first pick overall like what we thought he would be. And whenever we look at him, though, I mean, this is a guy that can move. And now he's dealt with some injuries, but in these healthy seasons that he's had, I mean, he could be anywhere from a 15 to 25 rushing yards per game. And the other thing is, man, they like to use him down inside the 5-yard line. Now, we do have a new coaching staff. But man, over the last 2 years, 21 and 28% of the carries inside the 5-yard line. Like that's not Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen level. Those guys are at 40 to 50% of their team's carries inside the 5. But man, like that's the next tier down, and he's actually pretty good at it. And he was good at that at Clemson as well. So yeah, you've got the upside for rushing, you've got the upside for passing. And then when you put it all together with Travis Hunter joining the offense, let's say he plays 75, 80% of his role on offense, which is what we're all fingers crossed hoping for. And you put that with Brian Thomas Jr., who can win at every level of the field. Brian Thomas Jr., throw him a 5-yard slant, it could be a touchdown. Brian Thomas Jr., tell him to run a go route, it could be a touchdown. Brian Thomas Jr., tell him to run a 12-yard, dig. Any of those things can turn into touchdowns with Brian Thomas Jr. So with Trevor Lawrence, man, having these 2 weapons, I know you lose Evan Ingram and you lose Christian Kirk, but those were more chain movers. These are 2 elite playmakers, man, that can really take you to the next level. So yes, I'm in on Trevor Lawrence, and I really surprised, my co-host Ian Hartitz on the Fantasy Life show, because I've pretty much been below consensus on Trevor Lawrence every year, and this year I'm ahead. I have him ahead of Ian. So I'm just trying to get in Ian's head, basically, Ronis.
Yeah, different year, different price. If you want to see the rest of the quarterbacks that Dwain highlights, check it out at fantasylife.com. Dwain, thanks for joining us, and hope you enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Yeah, man, appreciate you guys as well, and have a good one. I'm going to go mow the yard in the Texas heat, so, just
make sure you do it with a Bud Light.
I am going to do it with a Bud Light since this segment was sponsored by Bud Light, and I won't go to the sauna today. I'll just mow the yard. Like it's just as good.
All right, Dwain, always good talking to you. We'll come back. We'll wrap it up here on Fantasy Life, Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. It is Fantasy Life. Adam Ronis and Gene Clemons here, wrapping it up on a Sunday afternoon. And again, check out fantasylife.com. You can see the in-depth article that we were just talking about with Dwain McFarland, where he's looking for upside quarterbacks. He also had a thing at the bottom of quarterbacks that don't have as much upside as you think. And I completely agree with one of them, and that's Jared Goff. Like, I was surprised at how high he goes in some drafts. It looks like his ADP has fallen a little bit. At one point, it was in the top 10, and I thought that was absolutely insane because, number one, Goff doesn't run. Number two, he had a career year last year with 37 passing touchdowns. He had a 6.9% touchdown rate. His career mark is 4.8%. So it was basically, I think he had one huge game late that kind of catapulted him. His passing attempts went down last year from 605 to 539. Change an offensive coordinator. You would think they would keep the same concepts, but like Jared Goff is not a guy you want as your QB1 in fantasy. You agree or disagree?
No, I agree. And I think it's for what you said, but also because they're going to lean into the running game until the offensive coordinator gets like a little bit more of his feet underneath him, right? Like he's got to kind of like work into this position. So what do? We hang our hat on the thing that we know we can do versus anyone, and that's run the ball. So I think you'll see them come out and be a little bit more conservative than they were with a guy that had been there for a few years and had it rolling. They're trying trick plays all over the place. Like I think they'll be a little more conservative at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you see that ADP a little bit higher, too, because of the stack in best ball. You know, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta. So sometimes people just want to stack him with Goff, and that's why you see him go a little higher. But of the quarterbacks that he mentioned, like, who is your favorite to target?
Of the ones that he mentioned that he liked
in the article, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's still Justin Fields. I think a lot of people go with he can't throw. And I just go with he hasn't had as much opportunity to throw. If you look at what he was in Chicago, it wasn't a high volume throwing offense. And so, like, the fact that he put up the numbers that he put up, that he turned the guy into a wide receiver number one, who had never had wide receiver number one statistics, like, that's not just by chance. It's because he has the ability, but he's never been given the opportunity to consistently throw the ball. I think he'll have that opportunity with the Jets in an offense that's friendly with him, with a mentor like a Tyrod Taylor behind him. I think it's the best situation he's ever found himself in.
Yeah, and the thing with Fields, he's done this before. He has a season of QB5, a season of QB8, and has averaged 50 rushing yards per game in his career. So I am perfectly fine with him as my QB1 if I wait. That wraps it up here. Make sure you check us out, fantasylife.com. This is Fantasy Life on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio.